guess, looking back at the year as a whole, a highlight for me was actually acting up on stage in my local drama group's production. Now, acting isn't really something that I would have thought about doing as in my spare time. It's not something I'm going to do as a career, etc. But it's a great way actually to build confidence. And how I got involved with my local drama group, I actually edit where I live a local parish newsletter. Don't ask me why I got involved, but as a journalism graduate and somebody who would like to work in the media, is making efforts to, but or in a media related role, etc. I thought it would be a good for my CV, and it would be a good way for me to kind of find out more about the local area where I live, because as living in Norfolk, we knew nobody before we moved up here, so I thought it would be a good way for me to try and meet some new people, etc. And to cut to the gist of it, we got to about March, and one of the directors from the local drama group, the Wayland Players, contacted me and wanted to place an advert in the newsletter to obviously try and raise some, advertise their production coming up, advertising their spring production. And I went along to collect the check, for the advert to be in it. And what happened was I ended up staying for an hour just watching it. It was quite eye-opening actually to see these everyday ordinary people up there on stage. This isn't something new to me. I've got an uncle who has done some acting in his time, and his mum and dad were both heavily involved in drama in their local community and involved in several groups up and down the country. But it wasn't something that was new to me, because I had done a slight bit of acting, as I'm sure everyone does when they're in primary school, and I'd done some form of acting and directing and writing on my BTEC Media College, my BTEC Media course at my local college, back where I used to live in London. So it's always something that the production side of, or any form of show, whether it's a popular TV soap like EastEnders, Hollyoaks, etc., or whether it's a more serious drama like Holby City or EastEnders. Actually thinking about it, some of the animations, even stuff like Johnny Bravo, etc., are actually quite interesting to actually watch. Even now, someone in their mid-20s, it actually can be quite interesting to watch in terms of the production element. And I actually watch quite a lot of shows, and I do actually think about the production side of things and how this has been, put across. You can actually appreciate shows like that a bit more. That's my little zany comment of the day. But getting back on subject, and obviously we're 3 minutes in, and I've only got about 7 minutes left, because I like to kind of keep these podcasts about 10 minutes. But so, what was I saying? Blah 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 blah. Yes, so I went along and ended up chatting to the director afterwards, who was the one who was giving me the check. And I said, would it be okay if I popped along for the next rehearsal, just watch and see if this is something I'd like to get involved in? And I think they were quite surprised, but they were. They were welcoming, and I got involved in their production, helping out backstage, which was quite good. So I was in charge of all the various sound, just making sounds backstage that would go in with the play. And I was sitting up there in I can't remember what they're sitting up in, a gantry, a gantry-ish kind of box. Making the sound, so pressing buzzers and that kind of thing. But I was also involved in helping out on stage as my neighbour as a stage manager. So, which I actually didn't find out until I actually went along and found out that one of the people there lived across the road. So that was a friend I've made out of it. So getting back on the subject, because I do ramble on. I've went out about the 4.5 minute mark. So what it was. In acting for my part in our group's autumn production called Keep the Home Fire Burning, which was paying tribute to victims of the First World War. Obviously 2014 I can't remember off the top of my head when it was, but obviously this year was 100 years since the start of the First World War. So we as a group thought it would be quite appropriate, quite it was really something that we all felt quite strongly about, which we should do, and it was something that would challenge us and a couple of the people who were involved in there, who liked their history and their war history, so they were up for it, and I think quite a lot of us were. So as one of the younger people in the group, I was kind of forced into playing a part. It's we're a good group, but we're a serious group, and we're going to do a production. We want to do it right. So it was only really fitting that I, as one of the younger people in the group, second youngest in the group, got involved. And it was only a 10-line part, but it was something that I thought would actually be quite what way of saying it. I'm not somebody who likes to actually speak about my accomplishments, and despite being a bit loud at school, over the last 7-8 years I've become quite quiet. I'm sure that happens to a lot of people. It's just part of all growing up. You tend to listen more instead of shouting out whatever pops into your head. And getting involved on stage, for me, somebody who doesn't always at times have the best confidence, and I guess probably has suffered a bit from self-esteem issues in the past. I'm sure everyone does growing up in some form, way or another. Actually, for me, it was quite challenging at first. I was thinking, right, what I don't want to muck up my lines, and I put a lot of effort into in the rehearsals, and rehearsals are great. Rehearsals can be so funny. Anything that could go wrong at rehearsal usually does, and rehearsals are a great way to actually bond with your fellow cast. And you turn up for maybe an hour and a half. You do. And obviously in the middle we have a break, and in the middle of the break actually it's quite interesting, because obviously people come from all sorts of backgrounds, and I was having conversations with several members of the group who I found out had links to where I used to live in London, and we ended up speaking to one of the cast, a lady called Dawn, who played my mum on our production. I played a young soldier called John Pye, who was just about to go off to war, and our little bit in the production, it was a family of 4 going to a photography studio, and it was 3 scenes, and over the 3 scenes my character, my dad, and the owner of the studio all died, and it just left the women characters left. So over the scenes we kind of actually reflected how society reacted, and what various views were going on, such as suffragettes, and obviously the right for women to vote, and it did actually reflect on how some characters had a good marriage, some didn't, and how some characters really failed to move on with the times in a world at the time when women were rightly getting more power. But as for my character, and we're up to the 8-minute mark, so I might go over on this one because I've rambled on a bit. My character was a young 20-something soldier just about to go off to war, and director told me that it was important for me to kind of realise what that character was going through. And quite a lot of young people, quite a lot of people actually probably thought that the war wasn't going to last a long time, and it was going to be over quite soon. And it was, for a lot of the young lads, it was a big adventure, because unless you lived in one of the big cities, London, Liverpool, Manchester, for a lot of these lads it was the first time they were they were going to be out there on their own. And they thought it was going to be a big, not a big party, because obviously that's not the right way to put it, but they thought it was going to be an adventure, and they thought they were going to get up to all kind of sorts, and it was going to be just a big lads holiday, and it was far from that, obviously. And if you look at your World War history, First and Second World War, particularly the First World War, went on for far too long. There were just too many, in the end, because too many people joined up, the war just went on and on and on and on and on, and rambled on again. But the whole point of, obviously, it's important that I found it important actually to really think about what the character was going through in that moment. So particularly from my character, I was quite my character thought very fondly of himself, and I had to put on a voice something like, "Oh, is that a German camera? I do believe that the Hun make pretty good cameras." That kind of voice, and you have to obviously there's a way of walking around on stage and getting into character, and for me, somebody who finds it impossible to keep still, whether I'm on the couch or in my bed, I'm always moving about. So it's very hard actually for me to keep still. But once a couple rehearsals went through, it was fine. I had about 10 lines, and I thought I handled them quite well. Obviously, as any form of production, there are people who do forget their lines, but it's just one of those things. You just get on with it, but the audience appreciate it if you put the effort in. If you're making the odd mistake, I don't think they're going to care that much. But yeah, getting involved in acting isn't something that I'd have set my eyes on doing at the start of this year. But as I said, it just kind of happened, and you know, I'm not going to say that I'm not going to one day be able to play a major part in something, because I think I probably could, because they all said that I had the potential. But if they want somebody to play like a little small part of 10 or so lines, I think I'd be up for that. But the whole point of why I've thought about the acting was because it was something that for me was completely out of my comfort zone, and it actually forced me to kind of actually get up and kind of meet new people, which for me isn't really something I've coped that well with. You know, once you're in your comfort zone, your own group of friends, it can be quite, you know, you don't get lazy, but to a certain extent you're happy just to speak to people and just more or less have the same conversations. Not me and my group of friends were having the same sort of conversation, but you get the point. And actually being involved in a small group, and you know, we had to work really hard, and there was a lot of good creativity around, and you know, there's a great bond between us, which I'm quite proud to have been part of. Well, we've now gone on to 11 minutes, so I'll try and finish this up in a minute. But the whole point about acting and performing arts, etc., is I think it should be more particularly at my secondary school, it wasn't looked down upon. There was a drama subject there, but there wasn't really any form of encouragement from teachers, etc., and head of years to kind of have a drama club, so to speak, there. Which was completely the opposite at my primary school. And our primary school productions, I'm sure as any person would tell you who's all kind of schools do it, our primary school productions were really good, and everyone got involved. And some of the parts I had to play one of Aladdin's, one of Ali Baba's thieves, and there was one I played a policeman. I played James Bond, which is ironic because I've probably got the sex appeal of hard-boiled egg, but other than that, yeah, so I think acting should certainly be encouraged more by people at schools, and any form of creative activity actually really gets some form of troublesome kids, and even some lonely kids, it can actually build their confidence, get them involved, and actually give them something to focus on rather than some problems that they've got maybe away from school. So that's the end of episode 2 and my experience of acting. I hope you like listening to this. They are meant to be 10 minutes long. I know I've dragged on maybe 2 or 3 minutes more off the top of my head. But yeah, so that's the end of this piece, and those are my thoughts on acting, some of my experience in it since got involved in my local drama group. Have a good Christmas, and I'll try and maybe squeeze in another little podcast before the end of the year. Ta-da!